Yep. Great. So we're good there. And we're recording. Awesome. So let's get started here. Again, just as a reminder, as we're going through, we'll ask you for your response. You can type that into the chat section. All questions, type into questions. Wonderful. So this is the Private Practice Physical Therapy State of the Industry panel. We've put together an awesome panel here for you, and I'll get to everybody that's on that in 1 second. So what's this all about? This is a place where we get the leading thought leaders and experts in private practice PT to talk openly about the biggest threats and opportunities our industry faces. The topics we're discussing today are your choice and voted on by each person who registered. So we've had over 700 owners who've registered and completed the survey, and we just did that right now, but if you haven't done so already, just comment on your name and where you're from in the chat box on the right. And why are we doing this? Well, this year with BPTM, we've held a quarterly boot camp where we have owners from all over the country fly right in here to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And what we do is at the end of every boot camp, we just ask about like what we could do to improve it. And the one thing that frequently comes up is at the end, owners will say, you know, I really don't, I feel kind of isolated, I feel alone, I don't really have a safe place where I can openly share and discuss issues with other private practice owners and see what's working and see what's not. So that's the purpose of why we're here today. You know, we want to create a community where people can safely and openly talk about what exactly is going on in our industry without the politics or other self-interest being promoted. So we believe in private practice PT, and we want you to succeed. I'm a private practice owner right here, and every one of our panelists has private practice background as well. So if you stay into the end, there's no pitch on this panel. If you stay into the end, I'll give you something valuable. It's a completely free course that we created for free that will help you take advantage of one of the industry's biggest opportunities that we'll be discussing. So let's go through our panelists. First up is Chris Redden of US Physical Therapy. US Physical Therapy is the largest publicly traded pure play operator of outpatient and occupational physical therapy clinics in the U.S. They have over 500 clinics in 42 states. Chris, anything you want to add to that?
That was a great introduction. Thanks, Chad. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next up is Jeff Ostrowski. Jeff is the managing partner of Excel and Apex Physical Therapy. They have, the website says 24. Is it 26 clinics, Jeff? 26 locations?
Yeah, the guy in charge of the website has been asleep on the job for the last couple of weeks, so we'll get that up.
All right. So they're the largest PT-owned private practice in the Delaware Valley, and Jeff has done a ton of work in private practice on the national level for us. So anything you'd like to add to that, Jeff?
No, thanks for that, Chad. Happy Friday, everybody. It's good to be with you.
Thanks. Next up is Mary Daulong. Mary is the PT compliance expert for BCMS. She has spoken on a national level and done compliance for in private practice for over 46 years. BCMS specializes in practice operations and compliance consultations since 1985, and right now they work with private practices in 44 states. So welcome, Mary.
Well, thank you, Chad. I appreciate that. And we too now we're 47 states now.
Oh, yes.
So thanks for inviting me to be on the panel.
I think you have the same web person that Jeff has.
Maybe so.
Yeah. And next is Sturdy McKee. Sturdy is the co-founder of Schedule Doc, also of San Francisco Sport and Spine Physical Therapy with 3 locations in San Francisco. And right now, again, is an advocate on a national level for us as private practice owners. Anything you'd like to add to that, Sturdy?
So just that I'm also now working with clinicians to build a team of business coaches where we're helping the clients succeed through coaching and data-driven metrics.
Awesome. So
Thank you.
very good.
And I'm
Welcome,
also Hey, Chad, I'm also just really honored to be on this panel with all of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Sturdy. And finally, myself, I'll be playing moderator here. I probably have the least experience within private practice. Been a private practice owner for 13 years, and you probably know me from the marketing, specializing in private practice marketing, especially direct to access or direct to public marketing tactics. So let's get started here. You voted, and the topics for today's panel are what can we do about shrinking reimbursements? That's what we'll discuss first. The future trends for private practice owners and physical therapists. What we can do about physician-owned physical therapy services or hospitals and declining physician referrals and that trend, and how we can take advantage of direct access. So our first topic is how to deal with declining reimbursements from insurance companies. So we'll just go in order here. First up, Chris Redding. Chris, what do you see on a national level right now in terms of how your partners and how physical therapists are dealing with declining reimbursements from insurance?
Yeah, thanks, Chad. We kind of approach this maybe a little bit differently than typical private practice. You know, we have partner owners in each of our partnerships, but part of the function that we do, part of the function that we perform, is to take some of the headaches away. And so we've got a pretty large, deep managed care team that helps and works with national, local, regional payers, work comp payers, and networks to do the contracting partnerships. And so we're seeing right now what I'm telling our shareholders for the last 2 or 3 years is not that we're in a significantly pressured environment. We've been able to hold our net rate steady really since the NPPR change. We saw a little bit of a hit, you know, with that and the sequester. That was probably, 3.5 years ago or so now. Since then, we've been really steady, almost no change. It's moved around 50 cents or so in aggregate. What we tried to do is make it easier for payers. We've tried to take over delegated credentialing. We obviously think that, I think that size and efficiency matters. I think that, your product matters. In some cases to insurance companies, in other cases maybe not as much as it should. But, I expect the coming year to be another relatively neutral year for us at least. And I think over time we've got to do a good job on behalf of the industry to make sure that CMS understands the value that physical therapy brings, their constituents. Having been there a few times over the last couple of years, I know they don't understand, and I think that's a challenge that we have to hurdle.
Excellent, thank you, Chris. Next up, Jeff.
Yeah, let me just go back to my introduction for one moment and embellish my credentials a little bit. I am on the board of directors of the private practice section, which is a component of APTA. I've been a board member for 5 years and been involved in the PPS and APTA for really my entire career. So, but my thoughts today will be largely based on my own opinion and my own experience. But a big part of that experience has been my involvement with the professional association, and so I just want to stress the importance of our association and what they have done as far as leading the growth of our industry over the years. I've been around long enough to remember back when people didn't know what physical therapists did. I think we all realize now we've arrived on the scene. Society knows who we are. They know what we do. They're starting to understand what our value is. So we've come a long, long way. And a lot of that credit goes to, of course, the individual therapists who've, at the grassroots level, made that impression upon patients. But a large amount of that credit also goes to APTA and PPS for what they've done to put us forefront in the minds of society. So anyway, back to answer your question, Chad. reimbursements, in my opinion, are sort of flat to maybe slightly declining, and I think Chris just said that as much. There is some indication that perhaps coming down the road from Medicare, there may be some reimbursement cuts that we have to prepare for. When I look across the industry and I see what's happening out there, I think there's a lot of businesses that are doing very, very well right now. We see an enormous influx of investment, into this industry over, the last few years, and those are smart people that weren't putting their dollars in places that don't have growth potential and a lot of blue sky ahead of them. We know, and Mary will probably tell us because she's a reimbursement expert, that the variability in payment from state to state is pretty dramatic. But across the board, there really are businesses that are doing well. And I think what we have to focus on is how do we get better at operating these businesses? If you've got flat reimbursement, there's that's something that a reality that you have to deal with to maintain profit margins. And the way you do that is get better at operating. So get better at how to drive new patients into your door. So I like what you're doing for people, Chad. Get better at I think a challenge for us, I'll say, is to eliminate some of these administrative burdens that we have. We could deal with flat to declining reimbursement if we didn't have to jump through so many hoops to get it. MPPR, FLR, PQRS, you name it. Most of us are probably also doing our own internal outcomes programs. So all those administrative layers take time away from patients and reduce your quality and reduce your productivity and reduce your profitability ultimately. So I think that looking at it from that perspective, there are solutions out there. There are answers to how to operate better, and that's where we need to be directing a good amount of our attention as an industry.
Thank you, Jeff. Next up, Mary.
Well, thank you again, and Jeff. I am so glad that you are such an optimist. I would tell you that
Guilty.
What I'm seeing out there is not so positive. Yes, there are some people doing very, very well, and I think people like Chad and Carl have added a very positive environment and an environment of hope that you can do things. But I think, especially for the middle to small size practices, we're seeing a bit of despair. For the first time in my career, I have seen therapists close up shop and walk away. And that's very distressing. And I think a lot of it has to do with, and both of you had previously referred to having a grasp on your operations and understanding your business. And I think we have an issue, and when we look at the declining payment from insurance, I think that part of it is we take bad contracts. And you don't, as a small practitioner, have a whole lot of wiggle room, not a whole lot of, gosh, well, there's 50 of us, please give us a better rate. But people really don't look at their contracts carefully. They may not know that what their expenses are. So when they accept contracts, they can put them in the hole pretty quickly. I also think people leave money on the table. And Chad and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago when I was up at his facility. And it's as simple as knowing how to code correctly. We have obviously things such as, the 8-minute rule that keeps us in check, but we also have the AMA's greater than 50% rule now. And that particular rule gives us an opportunity to actually put more money on the books if we are coding correctly and if we're coding to purpose. So I think there are things that we can teach people out there, we can share with them, but they're going to have to be willing, again, to really know their businesses. Speaking of the private practice section, I'm on the payment policy committee, and one of the things that our committee commissioned a couple of years ago was a Milliman study, and I wished I had the opportunity to show you some really the study itself, it would make a lot more sense. But this particular study did look at the variations of payment by CPT code. It got into also certain types of diagnostic procedures. It is a great tool that we could share with everyone out there that says, hey, this is where we are on the bell curve as far as what we're being reimbursed, and here's what other people are on. And it would be a good negotiating tool. It's quite an interesting study, and if you are a member of private practice, it is on the website, and you can look at that. Definitely gives you some tools for negotiating. The other thing too, and I think Chris, because you are very out there, and you have the opportunity with the large number of facilities you have to have that presence. But many of the smaller practices are so busy treating patients. They're learning now from Chad that they need to be promoting their business, and we can get into special niches and grow that way.
Thank you, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, Stir.
Thanks, Chad. I love the conversation so far. I'm taking notes and couldn't agree more with Mary on a number of issues, Jeff and Chris as well. And I think ultimately when we're talking about decreasing payments, I like to say payments, not reimbursement, because
that's right.
We get paid, I hope. But anyway, it comes down to negotiation, and I think part of that whole process is really selling the value of what we do to payers, to employers, to patients, to other providers, to the public. And we're the only industry I've ever seen, not just in a, where the supply-demand curve doesn't seem to apply. We have massively increasing demand for what we do, yet our prices are going down. And that doesn't make any sense to me. So I think a lot of that has to do with the failure to communicate our value. And again, what people have said here, the marketing and the things you're doing can help us to communicate that to the public. I think that's a huge issue in trying to fight that downward pressure on our prices. Ultimately, to follow up on Mary's comment, if the contracts are bad, we had some success with just refusing them at first and then getting people's attention and negotiating prices up a little bit. We ultimately in California had a much harder time with that over time and opted out from the vast majority of them just because of the downward pressure and decided we weren't going to change our practice model. Therefore, we had to figure out how to sell the value and maintain a price point. So we basically set our own price points, and that's a scary deal and a scary process. It's also something we didn't go through, in one fell swoop, and it took years to kind of migrate and move through that. But that's an option. And having seen and worked with several hundred companies now through Clinician as well, seeing what that worst contract on your list can do to your overall average payment and to your profit margin and all, they've encountered a number of folks who are literally seeing patients at a loss. And you're having to see somebody else just to offset that to break even. And I don't understand where that mentality really comes from, other than the kind of the baggage we have from hospitals. But couldn't agree more with the operational improvements as well. I think there's a huge opportunity there. It's something I'm passionate about and work on. And I know Carl's doing a lot of that with clinic metrics and stuff as well, and similar to what I'm trying to do, helping people understand how to run their practices better. So I think operational improvements, selling the value of what we do, and really communicating that out are some of the things we can do to counter this downward pressure on prices and payment.
Chad, may I add just one other thought? That was so on target. That was so on target. But one thing I forgot to mention was that we also have to look at how we can decrease our expenses. And we're all talking about our administrative costs, how they have soared over the few years over the last 10 years has been outrageous. I know when I had my practice, it took us about 6 to 7 minutes to verify insurance, and now we can find our staff on the phone for 45 minutes or so. So I think there's some things, and it's a couple of things that we are looking at. Our practice is, our business as well as the private practice section is administrative simplification. We have a right to expect things to be more simple. That's what it's about. That is what HIPAA is to enforce. And we have seen some improvements, but not on our end. We do not have contracts that are transparent. We have pages and pages to go through, and exhibits and addendums and operations manuals to figure out if the contracts are going to kill us one way or another. And as Sturdy mentioned, you have to know that. The other thing is when we're looking at the standardization opportunity, many people are not taking advantage of the standardization of verification, remittance advices. If you use the electronic tools, you are shortening your steps. You're not having to manually enter in many places. So we have to look beyond just increasing the payment, which we definitely need to do, but we also have to look at cutting expenses and look where we can do that.
Great. So thank you, Mary. Just to sum this up and throw in my own 2 cents here, batting cleanup, completely agree with everything across the board. And I can tell you, just from the size of practice that we are, it can be overwhelming. And just to give you an idea, we have a staff of, I think, 38 right now, but absolutely overwhelming as a practice owner to try to juggle everything all at once. I know specifically Chris mentioned first the operational cost. That is a real issue for us, especially because we don't really have an economy of scale. But there is an increased administrative burden. And just trying to figure out how to do that in a way that's survivable, I think, is a real long-term issue. The other thing, at least what I'm hearing, is what's our outlook look like for the next 5 or 10 years? Absolutely, we have the Milliman study, we have the Virginia Mason study out of Puget Sound that Vanessa Furman's published in the Wall Street Journal. We have this information. My question is, are we really doing anything with it on a national level? Jeff touched on this. What the public is starting to understand what physical therapy is doing and what we're about and what we can actually accomplish in terms of benefits that we're bringing to the table. However, our market penetration is still really it's anemic. I think it's 9%. The last thing that we looked at through the the APTA with regards to market penetration for back pain. So that's I think we have great information, great studies. But I question if we're really being aggressive enough or effective enough in the marketing and positioning of what we're doing. So if the trend is break even 5 to 10 years from now, or it becomes more and more difficult to efficiently operate for the average smaller private practice owner, I think the one opportunity that exists is adding in back-end services. Now, at least from surveys, the 3 things that we've looked at are nutrition, massage, small group therapy. It's polarizing. Some therapists love to talk about it. Some don't want anything to do with that, selling drop ship supplements or something like that. I'm not a huge fan of that at all. But it actually has crossed my mind to examine it, where 10 years ago I would never have thought about doing that. We have client lists. We have good long-term relationships. Those people have comorbidities. They have other healthcare needs. How can we serve them? At least I'm willing to explore that now, where I wasn't in the past because of that, because of the declining reimbursement or that flat line trend. So that's my 2 cents on that. Thank you, everybody, for your input on that first topic. Let's go to the next one, and we'll switch up the order here as well. So the future trends for private practice owners and PTs. If you could identify 1, 2, or 3 of the top trends that you're seeing right now, what do you think what's jumping out at you, what you're hearing on a national level with regards to that discussion? And we'll get started here in a second, but if you're on this call as a listener, and you have a question that came up on declining reimbursements, or as we're going through trends here, just type it in the questions box. We will have a time here in about 35 minutes where we'll circle back around and you'll be able to ask your questions to the panel here and create some discussion there as well, make this interactive. So let's go in reverse order here. Trends, future trends for private practice owners and PTs. We'll start with Sturdy.
I didn't know I was going to be first up. Okay, so
surprise,
fair, right? No worries. So yeah, I mean, some of the trends I think that are obvious that we've all run into and we've seen, and you know, with PPS coming up, the conference coming up soon, we get together and we talk about these things quite a bit. One trend I've seen kind of happening, but kind of not getting full traction, I guess, is other channels, other revenue channels, offering gym services or exercise or those types of things. But I think then that ties back, at least in my opinion, to the operational improvements, what Jeff was talking about. If we don't run our core business really well, then I'm not a huge fan of adding additional channels that we don't run really well. I think we ought to do what we do really well first. But obviously the consolidation piece is something everybody's seeing and watching. I'm kind of neutral on that. I don't think that's the only way, and I hear people talking about how it's the only way. What it concerns me as a trend is the commoditization of what we do. We talk about physical therapy, and I've heard Jeff Hathaway on multiple occasions talk about nobody talks about they got medicine or they got dentistry. You know, they saw a doctor, they saw a dentist, that, you know, I saw a physical therapist, and really thinking about how we message that, how we talk about it, and decommoditizing, making sure that people understand the relationship with their therapist, with the business, the company that they're working with, all that I think is really important. The other thing, and Jeff mentioned this earlier too, was the increased understanding of the public. I think that is increasing, that is a trend. I think it still has a long way to go, and as evidenced by what you were just referring to, Carl, or sorry, Chad, I just wrote this down too though. Think about our total available market, our TAM. Low back pain, to break it down a little bit further, is about 50% of people go to their primary care doc who have low back pain, and then about 7 to 11%, depending where you are, so like the 9%, go to us. That's 9% of the 50%. So really that's less than 5% of people with low back pain. So I'm looking at market opportunities and this whole idea of supply, demand, and education and going, we're missing an opportunity and a trend here to multiply our market by 5 or 10 times. I mean, 10x still only gets us half the available market. So I think there's some huge opportunities here, and so some trends happening, some trends I think that we need to kind of start.
Yep. Thank you, Sturdy. Next up, we'll go to Mary for future trends for private practice owners and PTs.
Well, you know, when I talked with you yesterday about this, I said, oh man, I don't know if that's my strong suit to talk about that. But as you mentioned, a couple of things we had talked about, and I'm going to kind of just go outside the box with some of my clients and some of my colleagues, some of the things that they've done. One, and it's a PT from Lubbock. Can I mention their name?
Yes.
I don't think he'll mind. It's Physical Therapy Today. They're very, very innovative. They, when we first met and I did a site visit at their facility, I think they had 2 or 3 underwater treadmills, and now they have 20. Their focus went from treating the total joints to doing weight management. And that's very innovative. People will pay for it. He's added a dietitian to assist with this. So he's going way outside the box, looking at this and really making some headway into a market that we really haven't ventured into. I think also there is an opportunity, and I am seeing this in multiple sites, where yes, we've been doing fitness centers. we attach them to our buildings, we send our staff, we do whatever, but to really focus on a particular segment there. And yes, it is the seniors, and they do join these fitness facilities, but they don't play well with others because they don't need to jump on the equipment. So we're seeing therapists get in there and work with them in many different endeavors, but looking at balance and some of their endurance and even gait training. They don't have an impairment, but they need to improve their dynamic function. And so we're looking at those types of things. It's really good. The other thing I am seeing is people recognizing that, a 7 to 7 operations and 5 days a week does not utilize your space the rest of the day. So people are now leasing out space, bringing in others to get some relief on that lease space. And concierge, obviously, there's a lot of concierge services going on, and that is for allowable cash. We can't do that to our Medicare patients that have medically necessary or covered benefits, but there are a lot of people out there that are willing to pay for those concierge services. And one other really unique thing that I have seen and to dealing with the elite athletes. Everyone wants to work in sports physical therapy because it's neat. People who are at the top of performance. But a couple of therapists that I know really are working in some unusual settings, and one is a therapist that works and follows the NASCAR drivers, a couple of specific ones, and she does postural adjustments in their seats. Those are long strips of time that they're driving. So doing some innovative things, doing orthotics and many things like that, thinking outside the box, that's, I think, where we will see us explode.
Thank you, Mary. Next up, Jeff.
So, Chad, I'm so wrapped up in this very interesting conversation here, and off on all sorts of tangents in my mind. Do you want me to talk about pops and hops and physician referrals right now, or are we just?
I want you to talk about what's in your mind. Oh,
okay.
That's up next.
Up next, okay. Well, what's in my mind right now is being a physical therapist for a NASCAR driver. I love NASCAR. That'd be a great job. Why didn't I know about that when I was starting my career?
I was watching F1 last night. I stayed up too late.
I want to just talk a little bit about the cash business and the alternative programs that we bring into our businesses to address the issue of declining reimbursements, and this is really directly from my own personal experience. I had a major commitment to cash revenue some years ago with a golf program and a fitness program and a sports performance program and some other things, and they were a lot of fun. It was really cool to hang out and talk about golf all day with these cool golfers, and I teach kids how to run faster, and we had good success with them in terms of the outcome with the patient, the clients, and it was a lot of fun. But I think we have to be careful, just to pick up on what Sturdy said before, that we're physical therapists, and this is what our profession is, and I think if we do that really well, we have great chance to be successful, and we don't, because you only have so much time in your day and so much capacity in your brain for all sorts of different businesses under one roof. And if there's a cost to taking your eye off the ball of your core business, and I lived it. I saw it in my profit margin, and I saw it in the growth of my company. And I saw it improve when we terminated those businesses some years ago. So, I'm very optimistic about the pure play PT thing that we do. I think there's a great opportunity in there. There clearly are some challenges, but if we can do that really well, there is success there in the face of all of these headwinds that we have. And, the big headwind that we have as a profession, I think, is to the payment issue is still that we're looked at, in a silo when it comes to the payers and, the policy people in Washington, D.C. and so forth, and our big commercial payers. And, they look at us as a silo of cost to be managed downward. And so our battle is, how do we get them to look at us as someone who can, if they might spend a little bit more on us, but there's going to be savings that, pervade all across the system, from a reduction in hospitalizations and surgeries and medications and so on. So unified as a profession, and I'm going back to APTA here, is, I'm inviting all of the people who are on this call today who are not members to join, because that is the group that can help move this ball downfield, and specifically the PPS. I mean, that is the group of people like us who are on this call today, who are business owners, who have a common interest, who are entrepreneurs, who are risk takers, who want to make money and are proud of that, and there's strength in numbers, and we need all shoulders to the wheel. I had a chance to participate with Chris in a work group earlier this year with regard to payment reform, and it was really thrilling to see, even though there was some disagreement and it was tense. It was all for there was collaboration amongst all of these leaders of gigantic companies all across the country and our APTA folks, and it was really cool to see everybody get in a room, break a little bit of furniture every now and then, but we came out of that with deeper relationships and a more unified approach and vision to where we're going, and so there's really good things that can happen when we come together like that to address all of these challenges that we're facing. So hope that helps, Chad.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jeff. And just if it's any consolation at all, I wrote in my notes before we got started here, no $40 a month wellness. So when I had gone earlier, we're considering it. We haven't pulled the trigger on that yet because of past conversations that you and I have had. But what I was saying previously is like it's on the table for me to look at. So I appreciate your wisdom and advice there. Thank you for that.
I can also show you my, Chad, I can show you my income statements as proof of how that hurt us. So, but look, there's a lot of talented people out there that are doing fitness and wellness and other things and doing them really well. I recognize that. And I applaud and salute them for being able to execute at a level that I wasn't able to do as the leader of my organization. But I just think that keeping your eye on the ball makes a lot of sense. Who hasn't? We probably all, or most of us, have read that Good to Great book, and what do they call in there? Sturdy, the hedgehog concept, I think it was. Where just do one thing and do it really well, and keep doing it over and over and over again. So let's just keep that in mind too.
Thank you, Jeff. So Chris, I'll go here, and then you can clean up on this one. I think the biggest trend that at least that I'm looking at with the level that we're at right now is like, how are we winning business? And like about a year ago, I kind of started on an idea which was like diversification of atypical referral sources. I know when I started back in private practice in 2003, literally 100% of our referrals were our new patient flow came from physicians, and that's no longer the case. We're more than 80% as of today direct access, so it's over 1,000 direct access patients in the trailing 12 months, and it's mainly because of hospital systems in our area employ 75% plus of the physicians, and we have 5 POPs practices that are in my immediate area that we compete with. So the thing that we've noticed is that as we're diversifying, there's some really good referral sources out there that at least I never thought about before. In August, our top referral source was a personal trainer who referred 4 people to us. And mainly what they're looking to do is anytime somebody's injured, what do? They drop off of their personal training schedule and that's lost revenue to the personal trainer. So that's something that I never really thought about in the past, but we're being forced to now just because of those other healthcare landscape pressures. And what we found is that the barrier in sharing information and just getting ourselves out there via YouTube, social media, anything like that at all, the barriers of time, distance, and money kind of go away, which is really, really cool. Again, I don't think we were in a position where we had the tools to do that 15 years ago. We've had people fly in from California, Montana, Atlanta, Lexington, Kentucky, and now just last week we had somebody call from Canada and schedule an appointment. They're driving down. I treated a gentleman from Calcutta, India. Like that didn't exist 10 years ago, and certainly they're outliers, but it creates a process for us to share information and even create back-end income sources with what we do really know, which is like back pain treatment. Sharing information in a way and monetizing that's something that we're actively doing here right now. So, I mean, that's, at least for me, that seems to be where we're headed. We can share information easier and more effectively than we have ever been able to do in the history of not only private practice PT, but really the history of society in general. So finally, Chris, do you want to take this and wrap this up? The future trends for private practice PTs, what you're seeing on a national level?
Yeah, I tell you, when you have a group that's this esteemed, batting cleanup's not fun. You know, I do agree with Jeff. I'm a big believer that you focus on what you know best. We've been all over the board over the years, you know, kiosks and cash-based programs and sports performance things. And, it's a challenge when somebody really believes in something. You want to let them, make a go of it. What we found, though, is pretty similar to what Jeff described. We spent a lot of time, money, and mostly attention-based resources on things that people maybe were excited about at the time but didn't bear a lot of fruit. And I think in today's world, there's so much opportunity, whether it's opportunity on the work comp side with self-insured employers, opportunity to really position us as, the musculoskeletal primary care experts that should be first and foremost, on the front lines for the things like Sturdy mentioned in low back pain, and for the early intervention on the clearly non-surgical problems. We're in the process, and we had, to Jeff's point about, continued collaboration. We had a board meeting, an APTQI board meeting last couple weeks ago now, I guess, and we met with Sharon and Justin at the end of that meeting and had an afternoon together. And I do think there are a lot of things that collaboratively we can do together. We've recently, just very recently, again at that board meeting, we decided to enlist the Moran Group, which is a big group on the Beltway that works with large national care companies, big hospital systems, and others. There's a few groups like that. Avalier is another. But the Moran Group, we've gathered a lot of resources, a lot of money. We've commissioned the Moran Group to do a study and aggregate every efficacy study involving physical therapy that's ever been done, to create a white paper utilizing input from lots of experts around the country to really position physical therapy where it needs to be, which is on the front end, not the back end, or sometimes we find ourselves right now, but on the front end of the care continuum, and really in a position from a payer and CMS's perspective where we should see escalating spend in physical therapy. We believe that that's a distinct trend. NPAC's pointed that out. We believe that's the appropriate trend. We believe that more was spent on physical therapy as opposed to imaging studies where the diagnosis is already clear, or physical therapy removed, 2 to 6 weeks after an injury has occurred, where we could have gotten somebody better in that period of time and they could have avoided seeing other downstream specialists. So we think there's a clear opportunity to spend money, spend time, and spend resources because we do believe we can reposition our profession to further advance not only our companies, but the work, the very meaningful work that we do for our patients. And so I think there are a lot of things that are going to change in the future. I do agree that that there are things that we're going to have to really work on and focus on and fight through. But I think this is worth fighting for. And I'm 31 years in the profession, so I'm the old guy on this panel right now. But I think there's a lot of good opportunity ahead. I agree with Chad. I think one of the things that we look at in terms of the future is diversification of where our patients come from, just like you might want diversification in the stock market. When we acquire a company or buy into somebody's company, as we do pretty frequently, one of the things that we find is we're generally able to help them further diversify their referral base. And I think, again, in somewhat of a turbulent market, your ability to have a very diversified referral network is a huge benefit. Chad, you've spent, and helped, spent a lot of time and helped a lot of private practice owners be able to do that in very challenging markets like you have up there with Hershey Health System. So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can go at it. I think, you make a commitment and you go forward. And as Jeff and Sturdy and others have said, you keep an eye on the business so that ebbs and flows and challenges don't, put you in a position which Mary described earlier, which is you walk away and you get frustrated and you close your doors. I think you have to run, a good business, an efficient business. And I think historically, sometimes as therapists, we've put our head down on that and thought that was somehow not in alignment with also providing good care. We had a partner in the other day, and one of the things they talk about is, no margin, no mission. You have to have a margin, you have to have a healthy business in order to be able to, meet the needs of your patients and change people's lives. And so, I think all these things are challenges as well as opportunities, not just now, but for the future.
Well said, Chris. The topic that we're going to go into is what to do about POPs, physician-owned physical therapy services, HOPs, hospital-owned, and the decline in physician referrals. You can input as much as you're seeing in your real-life day-to-day experiences with this. I know Chris just alluded to, we compete with 3 hospital systems here, and it's pretty much on lockdown. But Jeff, I know you started to go into this briefly. Can you lead us off here?
Sure. First of all, it's good to know I'm not the oldest guy on the panel, Chris. Thank you. It's been a great panel. Good about that.
You keep saying guy.
Uh-oh. I'm not presuming
Mary, you're 39,
there,
right?
Mary.
Trying to be polite.
39.
So, yeah, I guess the POPs thing and physician referrals, I don't think my market is any different than most of where all of us are. We have physician-owned practices, and we've got hospital systems that own PT businesses, and it's definitely harder to get referrals out of those places. My sense is they're getting more sophisticated at keeping those new patient generation perspective. But that said, we're in a growing industry, and there's a lot of people out there that need PT, and they can't all fit in those guys' places or those gals' places. So there's still a lot of opportunity out there. We've got to be more creative, and I think Chad's solution is a really really cool one to kind of end run the physician. I love that. I love the whole direct access aspect of that. It's great. I do think though that with as payment shifts, and we have a growing amount of high deductible health plans in many markets around the country, including ours, that presents a good opportunity for us, because people are going to be more, and they are becoming more sophisticated, more shopping, more like, where can I get the best PT? And the models that are out there that I'm familiar with in my market that are pops and hops related are typically, frantic, run around with your hair on fire as a therapist. There's 100 patients in there. There's people laying on the floor. The service is really bad, truthfully, or not as good as it could be, or not as good as we are. And so patients, there are patients out there who won't put up with that and will look for a better solution. And if we're good at getting people better, then we have a place in this industry. Now we have to be good, and we have to have therapists that know how to sell, what's good about what we do. And I've been on a little bit of a hobby horse about this recently, that there's that sort of 5-minute conversation and an evaluation where you're finished your exam, and then you go into kind of telling the patient what their treatment program is and what their prognosis. And you guys have all heard this conversation, and I did it myself. Oh, you're going to come in like a couple, 3 times a week, but if you can't afford it, we'll knock it down to 1. I'll give you a big pile of home extra. And I'm not sure exactly what's wrong with you, but just let's get you in here, let's get you started, and we'll do some exercises, and we'll get you on the stationary bike over there, and we'll do a reeval in 4 weeks. Well, that like means absolutely nothing to a patient. That sounds like you don't know what you're talking about when a therapist talks like that, as opposed to someone saying, hey, this is what's wrong with you, this is weak, this is tight, this is stiff, I'm going to fix it with these exercises, I'm going to do some hands-on stuff to get that loosened up. It's going to take a month, you're going to be here 3 times a week, and when you're finished, you're going to be back to running, and I'm really happy to be working with you, and I'm going to be shoulder to shoulder with you to get your goals met. Now, that sounds confident, and it sounds empathetic, and we know that the PTs that are coming out of schools today have the ability, they have the tools, like guys like Chris and I never had when we came out of school. We're so much better at actually getting people better today. We just need to back it up with more confidence. So if I think that for all the guys who are and gals who are on the phone today who have young PTs, teaching them the skill of confidently describing to a patient what a treatment program is with empathy, you've got to balance both of those things, and then get that patient better. Do whatever it takes to get them better. We can compete against anybody if we do that.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. I'll go next just because there's a natural flow there. I completely agree. I think, and again, we have a lot of patients who go to a POPS physician. I mean, the largest 2 orthopedic groups in our area just recently merged. They have their own PT. And it's pretty regimented that you're expected that if you have a total knee replacement done within this orthopedic group, that you're going to do your physical therapy downstairs. Our end game is just for the physician who really, at least from my experience, is seeing 6+ patients an hour, that the orthopedic surgeon doesn't take the time to sell his PT. Where if our adamant patient who's on the table who just had knee replacement, we want her to demand to come back to Madden physical therapy. And it starts, you nailed it, Jeff, with that. I mean, we teach an exam process, a 7-step exam process for all of our physical therapists, and it's night and day for patient compliance. So, for example, we just had a new grad who started with us last year who was struggling to have patient compliance. She would have a lot of patients drop off. We went through and reviewed with her the 7-step exam, and immediately she had a much higher graduation rate, higher compliance rate. And just think about it, if we're graduating 30% of our patients, which is pretty much where she was at in the beginning, and then now she's graduating 80%, we have that many more people who are going back to their orthopedic surgeon or going to their physician who's now employed by the hospital, and that patient is demanding to come back here to Madden. And we can play that game forever because I know they're not teaching it within the hospital system or within the POPs practice right now, just because they don't have the time to do that. So completely agree with you, Jeff. And that's, I mean, it's what has separated us and allowed us to survive in the marketplace right now. Let's go to Mary next. So Mary, what are you seeing physical therapy owners do about POPs and HOPs competition and the decline in physician referrals?
Well, not enough, except I am seeing that some of the techniques you are teaching are really working. I think where I see the limitation are the people, and when we talk about direct access, not everyone has full access without any restrictions, and this is where I see our loss. The states that have some limited access, such as you can see a patient for a month, but then it has to go to the doctor, blah, 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 those types of things, those people aren't using that opportunity at all. They're just not using it. They said, oh, well, then we have to get them to the doctor and we have to do this, so we might as well just start off with the referral. I think that's a major, major loss for us. It gives us an opportunity to refer to a physician or to a practitioner that has the right to refer. And that really develops a more balanced relationship. When I had my practice, we had 10 physician-owned practices surrounding basically our building, and then we had a hospital that had outpatient services as well, and we took every opportunity we could to sell. Just as you were talking about, Jeff, you cannot discount your worth. You have to be able to present confidently. At the time, so this is how long ago it was, and the newspaper was our primary media, and we took out a public service announcement, and we said, when you go to physical therapy, ask these questions, expect these things, and don't settle for less. And we ran it frequently in our newspaper. They always had a little public service announcement place that you could put those things. We did see quite a few patients come for those reasons. And now we have social media. You know, we can educate the patient, and they can be the ones that look to see, hey, in this clinic, these things happen, and this is how I want to be treated. I want to feel part of it. Chad and I talked about one thing, and I'd love to just say this was my idea, and Chad knows what I'm getting ready to say, is a very stellar physical therapist told me one time we were talking about discharge reports, and she said, I hate the name of that. She said, why are we discharging our patients? Why aren't we concluding the episode and keeping those patients forever? I want to treat them, their children, their grandchildren. And it's just like what you were saying earlier about you get PT, but you go to your doctor. So it's that same type of mentality. And I think we fail to do that enough. We're getting better, and I love your 7-step, Chad. I'd like to see what that is. But there's one other thing that I am seeing happen with direct access, and therapists are waking up to, yes, we don't have to have just the bona fide, typical, traditional referrers. We go to the industry. We go to large corporations, and we show them things like the Milliman report and say, this is how much you're going to pay in this situation. Why don't we look at something that's more reasonable for us, but we could see your patients and we can see them without a referral for this period of time. So I think we really have to go out and engage those additional referral sources. And Chris, I will tell you, when you said profit, I wanted to say, Yahoo! What business is not expected to have a profit? Somehow or other, we look at our payers, we show them our expenses, and they're going, oh, well, you break even. Well, I don't want to break even. I want a profit. And we should all want that, and we shouldn't feel negative about it. And there are ways through direct access and showing studies of that nature. We can show that this is our worth, and look what you're paying for these other two sources when you go to a physician-owned practice or whether you go through the hospital, because the payment to those individuals is higher than ours.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Sturdy?
Chad,
Same question.
Yeah, I didn't think I had too much on this, but I have a question for you, Chad. Why is PT always downstairs?
For a physician-owned?
Or, well,
Just because
in the hospitals, one of the hospitals, it feels like we're always downstairs. And on that theme, I think of this hops and pops stuff as being kind of like real estate. It's really hyper-local. The environment in different places is really, really different. And I was about to kind of go into this, well, it doesn't really affect us that much. That's not at all true, actually, because my office in my marina clinic, the pops, I'm at home right now, but the pops is literally upstairs. Once again, we're downstairs, right? But we're on the second floor, and there is a pops directly above my office and our clinic. We're not really in competition with them, though. It's interesting. And the whole idea around the hospital stuff, we've been able to capitalize on the mentality of doctors, particularly at the university and others, as just being really independent. And regardless of what they're told, they want the best thing for their patients. And they're independent professionals, and they will make the decision based on where they think the best place to go is. And we've have very good relationships with some of the folks in those situations. I think back to that total market size, though, and it's huge. And if we sell our value, as Jeff was just saying, not just to the people who are in the clinic, although that's a huge miss for a lot of practices, is really conveying the professional decision making, the value that we can provide. The new grads, yes, they have the ability, they certainly have the capability, but there's a lot of, at least my impression, is a lot of lack in training, communication around this stuff, and really being able to sell the plan of care, the prognosis that I love I'll be shoulder to shoulder with you as a partner until you achieve your goals. All that's absolutely what we need to be doing. I think we take that out to direct consumer, to the greater public as well, and really, start preaching it and getting that word out there. And then if you take some of what Mary was talking about, we're still practicing very much within our scope, but working in these other populations that we may not initially think of. That total market, that TAM, it increases so much, even beyond just the low back pain or what have you. It's fascinating. 20 water-based treadmills working with bariatric patients. That's crazy, but it's right. And, it's still what we do really well, or what we can do really well. So I just think that's really cool. The other thing about the POPs and hospitals and stuff, I remember working in a hospital and they called us a cost center, even though, again, the payment was higher than it is for a private practice. In other words, they're losing money. We're not a revenue generator in a lot of ways. And I think we missed the point in a lot of cases that operating a PT business, a rehab business, whether it's OT, speech therapy, physical therapy, it's hard. And we operate on a really low margin compared to a lot of other businesses. So I see that as an incredible advantage in that world of POPs, because physicians, a lot of them really want to practice medicine. They don't want another business to manage, and they're sold this idea of it's going to be this great revenue generator and what have you. And if I was a doctor and I was looking at putting in an MRI machine or running a PT practice, that MRI thing looks a whole lot simpler with fewer moving parts, maybe a heavier investment up front. But, I just think that gives us a competitive advantage, a barrier to entry for those folks where they want to get out. Jeff, you mentioned one other thing, too, about disagreement and kind of that contention. I love the phrase cognitive dissonance. we know Harvard Business, Stuart Diamond talks about it. There have been studies where if you have that kind of cognitive dissonance, that disagreement, and it's productive and people can ultimately find the way and move out, businesses are more profitable, organizations are more successful. I think there's an opportunity there as well for us to really debate, discuss, have constructive disagreement, respectful disagreement, and exchange ideas and do better and better, and ultimately, not just bring in people who think like us and look like us and talk like us or what have you, but really have a more debate, discussion, and I think we need much more competitive. And I guess I just don't even view the hops and pops so much as competition. I know they're there. There's a risk. There's a potential. But if we do what we're supposed to do on everything else, I think it's overcomable. We can get past it.
Thank you, Sturdy. Not as large of an obstacle as we make it. I think
I don't think so.
At least that's what we say here internally. And by default, Chris, you get to bat cleanup again. Sorry for that.
That's right. Well, I agree with everything that everybody said so far. When I get up in the morning, I don't spend any energy, any emotional energy, or any time at all worrying about POPs. So I'm just going to kind of set that aside. It's been around for a long time. I don't love it. It's there. What we try to do in markets where there's heavy POP penetration is just make sure we cover the outlying areas, because we still get referrals from those practices. And ultimately, if you do a good job, you don't just get referrals, but you get the doctors' wives and kids and the people who are important to them, which tells you a little bit about how they run their operation. So I'm not too focused on that. I don't think it's something that an individual practitioner can influence, other than they can just focus on being the best they can be, and again, diversifying their portfolio from a referral perspective. On the hospital side, I do spend some time thinking about that. I think that is I think with every challenge, there's an opportunity, and I think, our challenge is to figure out where the opportunity is with hospitals, both from a partnering perspective, so from a competitive perspective. So if we kind of put those in two different columns, Jeff, I think mentioned earlier, one of the aspects of non-Medicare, so commercial hospital business, is it's 2 to 3 times more expensive. And so if you have a high deductible plan and you care about your spend and the efficiency of that spend and wanting to get a good outcome, but people are beginning to shop more and to be more informed. So that's one aspect. The other aspect, and I'll just kind of allude to a story recently. This is a major metropolitan market with a dominant healthcare system, lots and lots of facilities. For them, not a lot of competition. It's also a market where we have a lot of facilities. And as hospitals gradually shift into more of an insurance-related position, meaning they take risk, and so they become effectively the insurance company of record. They care more about outcomes. They care more about a cost and how care is delivered. So in this particular market, got kind of a call out of the blue from the CEO, CFO of this major hospital system. He said he wanted to meet, and the topic of the discussion was, for their products where they took risk, they were very familiar with our facilities, familiar with the fact that we have long tenured therapists, not not just young therapists, but a lot of long tenured people, a lot of experience. We get our patients in immediately, and we try to be efficient and effective with our care. And their position was, where we take risk, we would like to partner with you in physical therapy because we know that you do it better than we do. We know that you do it more efficiently than we do. Now, ironically, they want to keep everything else where they don't have risk in the hospital, which seems, to be a little misguided from a patient's perspective. But there are opportunities out there. The bundled program for joints, I think, is an opportunity not just for hospitals, but in surgeons, but for physical therapy in general. We're seeing opportunity there, just because we can be more effective and more efficient on an outpatient basis with the right skill set and the right care delivery. And I think the marketplace, if we position ourselves appropriately, will recognize that in time.
Great. Thank you, Chris. All right, final topic. How can we fully take advantage of direct access? I know one thing that a blog post that I did about a year ago that became pretty popular and was well circulated was direct access is a destination for physical therapists, not necessarily a destination for patients. And within the last year, with the number of direct access patients we've attracted, not once have we used direct access in any sort of verbiage or usage to accomplish such. But for the panel, I'm interested in your take on direct access and what we can do about that. So let's start with Sturdy, and then we'll go on down the line. So Sturdy, your take on direct access and how you're using that at San Francisco Sport and Spine Physical Therapy.
Thanks, Chad. Really, how we're using it, to kind of start with that, is not effectively enough, is the short answer. Primarily through return new patients, and as Mary was saying earlier, we will manage that. California is not fully open. We have hoops to jump through and notifications, and then have to refer to the physician. I love that, though, because that just flips the clinical pathway. Again, like Chris was saying, where we know we're more efficient, we turn into a referral source, as Mary was saying. It works for us where we're using it. And along those lines, we're the most cost-effective and efficient way to treat the majority of people with musculoskeletal issues, for sure. And then there are a lot of other potential issues and problems as well that we can put ourselves in that position quite effectively. So whoever figures out, and I know you're working hard on it and have some keys, but I think cost-effective direct-to-consumer marketing that can scale, that's really the key, and something kind of exploring and trying to work on. I think it's a huge opportunity. I do think that while understanding is increasing, that we're nowhere near the recognition as a profession, as a service, that we need to be in the public's mind. I think we encounter this over and over when we meet new people, at a cocktail party or at the PTA at school or what have you. If they ask and you answer that you're a physical therapist, the answers you get back are usually disappointing compared to what I'm hoping the respect and the the understanding of what we do really is. So it's an educational opportunity each time, but one at a time is and I want to figure out how to scale that and make sure that we educate people and let folks know what we do. Thanks.
Thank you, Sturdy. Chris, we'll circle back around to you on this one. What you're seeing your partners do with regards to taking advantage of direct access?
Yeah, so it really becomes an issue around how focused the partners are, how many facilities they have in the market, their interest in kind of jumping out there and embracing it. I would say by and large we still have more work to do. We have some partnerships, like our STAR partnership in Nashville. They have a big direct access focus. They market, they web optimize, they do a lot of things designed to create community awareness and individual awareness. We cover 40 or 50 high school football games on any Friday night, different schools, and so we're out there, we're talking to people. Listen, as I alluded to before, having been in the profession for a long time, long before there was direct access, and maybe to Jeff's point earlier about how sometimes we don't sell enough, within our facilities and outside of our facilities. I was selling all the time. I was constantly talking to people. I was constantly telling friends and family, if you have somebody, friend, a family, a coworker that has, an orthopedic problem, get them to call me. I'll spend a few minutes with them on the phone. If they're having trouble getting in to see a doctor, have them call me. I know the doctors. I'll grease the skids. And so that wasn't direct access, per se, but it was providing value which helped you control the narrative about what happened with the patient, where they ended up. And again, from a value perspective, delivering value sometimes and most of the time back then without any immediate reimbursement, but with having impacted somebody in a positive way, the assuredness that they were going to come back to the facility for the physical therapy. And I think there are many, many more opportunities that we have within our company and within our facilities and within the profession to sell effectively what amazing things that we can do, both effective and efficient, to help impact these people. And I'm a big believer in trying to, control the dialogue and be a referral source. I don't mind if we have to see somebody and later refer them to a doctor. I don't mind if even over, a brief consult, we determine that, the better to go get an x-ray first and then we get them back. I think that puts us in a position where, we ought to be, where we're on the front end and not the backside. But we definitely have more work to do.
Thank you, Chris. Jeff, same question.
Yeah, I think we're not very good at the sort of direct to consumer, getting someone to walk in off the street who's never been in therapy before. I'm speaking for me and my company. Not sure really how to do all that stuff. I think what we're good at, and what I think we can all be good at, is once that patient gets in the door, is developing the trust, because we cared about them and we worked like crazy to get them better, and we made it a good experience for them, and we got them all the way better. We didn't discharge them when they were 3/4 better because we were so busy and we just wanted to get rid of them because my boss was making me see 20 visits a day and all the rest of it. I mean, that kind of business model is not, if you're beating the heck out of your therapist all the time, I'm pretty sure you're not going to be successful at building or optimizing your potential to build patient loyalty. So that goes back to my first comment today, was on the operations side. How is your business set up? Are you whipping these therapists to death? Because no one signed up for that when they went to PT school, and we're all PTs, and we know we love people. We want to help them. People, we want to do good things. We want to change the world, and it even ties back to the hops and pops things before, because the environments in my market that I'm familiar with there are high volume markets, and so they're not. I don't think that's an enduring model for building patient loyalty. So, it just goes back to, let's be good therapists. Let's teach our guys how to sell. Let's make sure go into it. Like, let me give you something practical today. People on the call, go into the eval with your staff PT next time and sit there and listen to what they say. And then take notes. And if you hear words like, oh, probably, or maybe, or something like, or I'm not really sure, or jargony stuff, that's they're trying to impress people how smart they are, sit them down and coach them on how to actually have a conversation with somebody and how to sound confident. And I think that is the way to really attack the direct access opportunity for us. And it's a win-win because it cuts out the pops and the hops. And Chris, I love what you said, man. I get a chance to send those people out to physicians when they come back to me. Come on, how about being on that end of the deal instead of going and asking for referrals all the time? The end.
Great. Yeah. Really quick, Jeff, along the lines there, I was thinking back to the one line that our newer grad said, entry-level PT from a year ago, and she said, if you agree with this, is how she would close her eval. Like, here's what we're going to do if you agree with that. And then what she switched, and it was our director was sitting in an eval with her. It's an awesome exercise. It's life changing if you actually look at it. And what he did was help her just have a different line there, and she changed it to, here's what we're going to do, and instantly her schedule filled, and it was like it's one line that it absolutely changed the course of 40% of the patients that she was seeing in terms of their plan of care. Like, now they were following through just because she made that one little change in her plan of care summary. It's literally can be practice changing.
I bought a car a couple weeks ago, Chad, and the guy didn't say, if you agree with this price. No, sir, I do not agree with that price.
That's awesome.
You bought the car, though.
Yeah,
I did. I needed that car. My daughter's driving now, so I needed that car.
Thanks, Jeff. Mary, direct access. How to take full advantage of direct access.
Well, Chad, I think I probably rolled that into my previous response, but I do think it's worth reiterating that we really need to lobby the payers. Direct access is useless if we don't get paid. And I know I recently read in one of the Blue Newses, it said we pay for physical therapy services under direct access. And I was totally surprised. So that was a neat thing to see. I know that some states have been very, very aggressive in dealing with the insurers, but we all have to do it. And you might as well do it now, talking about, the opportunity that brings to them. The partial access, again, as we were saying, use it as a two-way street. You get the patient in, you eventually refer them to another practitioner, and that levels the playing field. And really, I don't have much more to add because I'd be reiterating everything I said a moment ago.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mary. I have some pretty strong opinions on direct access, and I heard this at least 2 or 3 times from our other panelists, but I think, number one, it's delivering value. And the best way to do that, by far, at least from testing here in our clinic, has been delivering valuable information. And really, it's nothing more than just listening to the concerns and questions that our patients have, and then putting it in a format that they can easily consume. So it might be a video. So like back in 2010, I started recording videos, posting them on YouTube that were really just answering questions for patients, and they went viral. And now we're over, I think it's 9.5 million views, and that's mainly that's one of the biggest lead attractions that we get for people flying in just for care. We turned around and took some of those videos and made a book back in 2011, and having a book on back pain immediately put us on the map. And now whenever we're out in the community, like Chris was talking about, working the football games, or we do a lot of health fairs specifically for 50-plus expos. That's been really popular, or retirement communities, or we were just at a credit union doing a health fair. We just offer a free book, and then immediately we can start having a conversation with a person. It costs us $2 to $4 to deliver that book, but now they've raised their hand, they've said they've had back pain, and we're really much there as a resource for them, as a source of help. And at a recent boot camp, we had a therapist. His name was Rob. And Rob was looking for new patients and stabilizing the new patient flow to his clinic. And he said, if the public just understood what we really do in physical therapy, and in private practice, we've all had that experience where somebody comes in, they haven't been able to walk up and down the stairs at the end of the day in the last 3 years, and now all of a sudden, 3 weeks into PT, they can do that. And it's life-changing, and their expression changes, they're happy, they love us, they know, like, and trust us. We've shared some personal information likely with them. They know how many kids we have. We know about where they grew up, or if they like the Steelers or the Eagles or whatever that is. There is a lot that we can do with that. But it's not going out and saying PT could help you. It's, hey, do you want to be able to go up and down the steps again? And it's paring down what we do I get to read a lot of physical therapy media that goes out, albeit videos, Facebook ads, websites, newsletters. I get to read a lot of it, daily influx of that. And one of the biggest things that I think we miss out on is putting that experience. I'm able to go up and down the stairs for the first time in 3 years, or I'm able to sleep through the night for the first time in 7 years, or we had somebody come through recently who played golf for the first time in 8 years. First time they played golf in 8 years. That's such a big deal. But most of us try to physical therapy language it and turn it into, we helped her with a pelvic or sacroiliac dysfunction. The public's not buying that. And, the responsibility, and what I told that physical therapist, Rob, I said, you've identified the problem, correct, but the responsibility really is on us to create that direct access language and create that valuable content that they're going to consume, see we're of value, see that we can provide something to them in a very positive way that's cost effective and help them get back to normal. Yes, so that's, again, and I'll circle back around to the Virginia Mason and the Milliman study. Like, that is super valuable content right now. One of the first private practice physical therapists I've ever worked with, Travis Robbins. I know you know him as well, Jeff. He's in front of 150 CEOs, 10 minutes, and the CEO of Priceline, I know, was in the room. He took pictures and was texting them out to our group this morning. But we all want to be able to, like, now that we have direct access, or in many states, it may be limited. Like in Pennsylvania here, we're limited to an eval and treat for 30 days. But nonetheless, we now have that. But Travis was racking his brain all week long. How can I pack the most information, most valuable information, into 10 minutes to win over the viewpoint and the perspective of these clinicians, or of these CEOs? And I said, well, treat somebody in front of the whole group. So I'm not sure that's the right thing to do, but it's extremely effective. Again, patients will overcome, and clients will overcome time, money, and distance for that. So, and I think we can be really meaningful and valuable in direct access content there. This year alone, we've had, just with one simple Facebook ad, we've had over 750 people log in right here in central Pennsylvania to a workshop and register for a workshop. And over time, that talk about atypical referral diversification. Nothing's worked better than that in the history of all private practice, at least for me, in terms of attracting direct access patients. So as I promised, free direct access marketing course I put together just for you as a private practice owner. It will help you implement the things we just discussed. If you're interested, just type yes in the chat box, and I'll share it with you. Okay, great.
Chad,
and
to piggyback
yes.
on what you just said, nobody
Yep.
wants to buy physical therapy. They want to buy the result. And I've seen you preach that and talk about it, and it's so important to, I think, to repeat that message. We're often pitching the wrong thing.
Yep, we're not buying a mattress, we're buying a good night's sleep. We're not buying a vehicle, we're buying safety for our daughter. I completely agree with you, and I think we missed that as an industry across the board. Thank you, Sturdy.
Chad?
Awesome. So yeah.
One thing, if you did refer to the Virginia Mason study and Milliman, we did a webinar in 2015. PPS did, and I believe it's called "Getting Paid What You're Worth." It was a two-part series, and it does have both of those studies. We focused on both of those studies, so if people are interested, they can find it there.
Awesome. Getting paid what you're worth. And who was the target audience for that, Mary? Was that for PTs, or was that for PTs to use for the general community?
It was for PTs.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, at least in my viewpoint, I think we have that information out there. I think we then have to go back and simplify it in lay language so that the public truly understands what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Cool. So the free direct access marketing course, here's what you get: 4 levels of private practice owners and a marketing assessment, and then a super powerful direct access marketing system you can implement in 15 minutes. Shared this with one owner who'd been in private practice for 23 years, and he immediately had his 3 best weeks in private practice in his full 23 years of existence. Really, really cool stuff. So, here's how to get that. You go to, and we'll open this up for Q&A here in a second. We'll bring Carl on, and he'll moderate for us because we've received a lot of emailed questions also within the question log here. So you can go to stateofpt.com/direct-access, and when you enter your name and your email, you'll be taken directly to the first video and infographic. It's 100% free. That's my gift to you for being in private practice PT here with us. So open questions at this point. Carl, can you hop on and moderate our questions here?
Yep, just give me 1 second to pull them up. There are a ton, but I have some organized. And there have been several coming through. Let me just, I want to find the ones that were really several about the same thing. So here's one asked by Todd and Ross at the same time. Is it a good idea to go back to insurance companies and renegotiate contracts? What's the best way to do that, and how do you do that if you're a small clinic?
Great. Let's start with Chris on that one, and then we'll go to Mary after that.
Yeah. So the way I think about it, I think it's always good to negotiate. I think you have to go into that kind of eyes wide open and heads up, and in order to do that, I think you have to get information. You have to kind of know where you stand. You have to be able to demonstrate and document value, whether that's in outcomes or length of stay or cost or efficacy in some way, shape, or form. I think it's harder, and I'd be lying if I didn't say so. I think it's harder for a single site practitioner to go in and to be able to, command attention and to do that. I think that certainly that, if you have a larger practice in a bigger footprint, it's easier to do. But yeah, I think if you think your rates are low, if you think you're being underpaid, you're certainly being paid less than the hospitals are being paid. But they're being paid what they're being paid not because they're more effective or more efficient. They're being paid that because they have leverage, and I think that's somewhat the challenge for the small practitioner. But it wouldn't stop me if I felt like I needed to get a boost.
Thank you, Chris. Mary?
So I think one of the things that I would start off with, and I think I mentioned this in the very beginning, is you have to know your expenses, direct and indirect, and know what is a reasonable profit. You are going to have to provide something, especially if it's a small practice, that shows your outcomes. You need to know things like episode of care for a particular diagnosis or categories. Offering things such as, and now it's a real buzzword, have a compliance plan. Especially the MCOs are requiring that of their providers and suppliers. So bringing those things to the forefront. It is a sale of your values, what you can bring to the table, but also explaining that, okay, they're going to be paying more if you're not in the network, and if you have to drop out because there is no even any margin at all, then it's not feasible for you to continue seeing the patient. So there's certainly a tactful and diplomatic way of stating that. Showing them the numbers is certainly one of the things. It's kind of like, and I think it was Jerry Maguire, show me the money, and we're going to have to learn how to talk that talk.
Thank you, Mary. I'll pitch in here. Tracy, our billing manager, a few years ago, we were looking at contracts that we were losing on, and we just said, hey, we're either going to opt out of these or negotiate a better rate. And she simply asked. And we're not large. I mean, we're right now 700 visits a week. At the time, we were probably 450, 500. And so it's not like we have a lot of negotiating power. And we just said, hey, here's our break even on providing a visit, exactly like Mary was saying. And then we just went, as Chris mentioned, went to them and said, hey, what can you do for us? We don't want to have to drop out of your contract. And in most cases, we got a $5 to $10 increase just by asking, and it was actually a lot less effort than what we made it to be. It seemed a lot scarier going into that negotiation, and they were all pretty quick just to ask that. And some didn't change at all, and we dropped out of those networks. Jeff or Sturdy?
I don't have anything more to offer, Chad, so I'll pass.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
I just have, thanks, Jeff. I have a couple ideas. As Chad mentioned, we went back to, as some of this downward pressure happened, we went back to different insurers, and we're actually able to get some increases pretty readily, pretty quickly, as you stated. Some kept going further, some then made another cut, some decided they weren't going to keep that, they were going to go to the lower rate eventually after another 2 years, or then, I love the MPPR deal, because then I think Blue Shield in California said we didn't change our fee schedule, but yeah, they created a cascade, so the net effect was pretty horrific. But I think you can, if you have a relationship with, or you have a lot of patients coming from a certain employer, you can leverage the employer, you can talk to their HR to help, if you're providing a great service to that group, they're the buyer, they're the customer or client for the insurance company, and that might help with some of the talk. I pause this because I want to grab this is one of my new favorite books, Getting More, and you can see it's only about 2.5 months old, but it's dog-eared and beat up. And Stuart Diamond, it's all about negotiation, turns everything on that you probably know about negotiations on its head, but really having that dialogue, figuring out what the pictures in their heads are, is the way he puts it. Figuring out things that can be exchanged of unequal value. There may be a need that they have that you can provide or address that doesn't cost you a lot in exchange for something of value in return. So I think just opening your mind, getting over the initial fear, and engaging them is a huge step. And then asking those questions, as Chad just said, talk to them, find out what they need, what's going to work for you.
Yep. And one final thought there, Sturdy, with the hundreds of practice owners that we've worked with, many have complained about, what do I need to do? Do I need to go through an exercise and cut? Every time I just ask, have you ever gone back to the insurance company and asked your representative that you deal with directly to negotiate? And 100% of the time it's no. So I think that's a good place to start. It's just having that conversation, obviously with a larger insure plan or a larger insurance provider. At least for us in our area, we haven't been able to get through and make any headway, but the smaller ones are often willing to have that conversation. Just ask. Great. Next question, Carl.
Okay. Next question, just a quick one here. A ton of people have been asking Mary about your 50% rule and where they can get more information on that, or the AMA billing rules for 50% improvement on reimbursement. Can you hear me?
Yes. Mary, do you have a resource for how people can learn about the AMA 50% billing rule?
So sorry, I was talking and I was muted. I know y'all want to do that sometime to me, but I did it to myself. I have on our website, under our resources, Medicare, a slide presentation that shows the Medicare 8-minute rule compared to the AMA rule and how you utilize those different methodologies. So is my website listed with my number?
I'll tell you what, Nick, can you pull that up, and worst case, I'll make sure I email it to everybody who's on this webinar.
Okay.
And everything else we talk about that you want to link to, I'll make sure we put it all together,
Okay,
along
great.
with the recording and everything. All right, so I'll go
and we can do the same. We can do the same for everybody.
Yeah, anything that people ask for in terms of links and stuff like that, we'll just pull all the links together, and I'll follow up with people if we don't know what they are. But yeah, we can do that, and I'll just make sure there'll be some sort of like guide we'll put together on this whole call, and it'll come with the recording and with a bunch of links for you guys just to know what you guys were referring to. Question from my friend David Strait at eRehab. How do you see APTA's alternative payment system helping with reimbursement?
Jeff.
Happy to jump in, Chad, if you'd like. Well, where we
Yes,
sit today,
please.
hi Dave, by the way, where we sit today is the APTA alternative payment system is, I guess I'd say it's on mothballs. There was a lot of work done on it over the last few years, but due to some concerns that various stakeholders addressed and whatnot, we decided to unplug that for now, redirect into some other areas. So, I think the challenge is how do we really get paid for value instead of pay on a per click utilization model. And I think everybody kind of realizes, most kind of mature people in the industry who kind of have a vision of where things are going. A utilization-based payment model probably doesn't work right now with some of the things that are going on. So, I know the APT is really aware of that, and whatever model we either land on ourselves and are able to pitch to the policymakers and society, we have dictated to us. We hope to be able to influence in a direction that we're paid for the value that we that we contribute.
Thank you, Jeff.
I would add my own 2 cents. My own. I hope that we get paid more in the end because we deserve it. We earned it. We have the cost of education for young PTs now is really a challenge, and when we're living in the reimbursement environment we're in right now, it's very difficult for this profession to make sense for people when they sit down and do the math on how much I've got to borrow and then how much I'm going to get paid. And I'm worried, very worried that we're chasing wonderful people away from this profession if we don't get that sorted out. So, we got a real challenge on our hands there to make sure we get paid the way we should be paid. And I'm optimistic that we're going to prevail there. But all of you guys on the phone or on this call right now need to be in the trenches together, working together with Chris's APTQI group and APTA and PPS, working together to make sure we get that done.
Chad, I'd like to add also that while the alternative payment system is, on the back burner, we still are going to the AMA's new evaluation coding, and that is effective January 1. There are a lot of efforts being put forth by the APT individual chapters to bring this information to the forefront, help you understand the new terminology, and learn how to code the complexity appropriately in a very short period of time, because that's in a couple of months.
Great. I will, this is just an idea from talking here. Just for those of you that are in the audience, I know for myself, I've never seen a step-by-step guide of how to negotiate with an insurance company. I know we just made the call and kind of invented that on our own. Is that something that, if it was available, would you want that? So here's how to negotiate a contract if you're a small private practice owner. Because I think like the assimilation of examples where therapists have actually done that, and like having like that to me would be super valuable. Do any of the panelists know of any resources at all that are open to the public that would suffice there, that would fill the void?
I'm not aware of anything that's a step-by-step process. We have a number of things out there that relate to understanding your contract, but not necessarily negotiating the terms.
Yeah.
And I think it would be very, very valuable.
Yeah, we're working on a theme webinar for clients at Clinician to do just that, but I'm not. And part of the reason is I'm not aware of anything that's publicly available right now. I think that'd be a huge value add, Chad.
Yeah, thank you, Sturdy. Jeff or Chris?
You know, I don't know anything like that, but I think you could also answer this question that I have when this topic comes up about insurance company negotiations. I don't want to open up a can of worms, but I think it's a good question that probably a lot of people who are listening have, is if your blended, net payment rate is profitable and you have capacity in your schedule with your therapist, is it okay under those conditions to still take a lower paying contract that might not meet your, exceed your cost per visit, Mary, that you taught us earlier today? So it's just a question, I think, that, there's a lot of debate about that one, and what the answer to that is, I don't really know, but it'd be cool. It'd be cool to explore that.
Yeah, that we'll need a whole other webinar, Jeff, for that. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you, Jeff. Chris?
No, I'm not the insurance guru guy. We have a good team that does that. I think it varies across and among insurance companies, but I'm not aware of an aggregated resource that's kind of a step-by-step either.
Thank you. Okay, just a quick idea. Carl?
Cool. Just a lot of people asking about what your 7 steps are. I think they're talking about the exam process and where they can get that.
Yep.
Quick one.
Yeah, it's a training that we've released in the past. Jeff and I have talked about it. Really quick here, I can give you the most important step, which most of us do not ask, and we don't learn to do this. But it's have you ever had physical therapy before? Most clients or patients that we're seeing here, they've had a past, and if we don't uncover that, if they've gone to PT in the past and it didn't help, and now they're trying a different facility, and we don't ask that question, and we just teach a little 3-step process to handle that. It's, have you had physical therapy before? If they say yes, we just ask what happened. If it's positive, great, you don't do anything. If it's no, it didn't go well at all. By the way, going back to what we were talking about with marketing, most of the general public, lay public, will assume that physical therapy equals chiropractic care, equals massage therapy, equals, we've had people call P90X doing their physical therapy at home or insanity, like the home workout programs. So there's a lot of confusion there. But we're looking for a bad experience. If there is one, we just want to ask them what happened, and then just simply recognize and acknowledge, not disparage any other clinicians. So if they saw the chiropractor down the street and the chiropractor did an adjustment and that person couldn't walk for the rest of the day, we don't disparage the chiropractor. We just say, okay, so the therapist did this and you couldn't walk. Recognize and acknowledge that. That's one of the steps. I'll put something together for you if you're on the call to discuss the 7 steps and show you what they are. Go ahead, Carl.
Okay. It's hard for me to choose. There's so many questions. So what trends have you been seeing in the aging marketplace? what concierge services are you seeing for seniors specifically that are allowable? This is Catherine.
Who in the panel?
That was me.
Yes,
That was me.
Yeah.
So what I am seeing is, as you know, if a service is medically necessary or a covered by statute benefit, that we cannot collect cash for those services. However, that doesn't mean you can't go to the patient's residence. A number of people do that. You cannot charge Medicare for transportation, but you can prepare the patient maybe to come into your clinic. You do not get any additional revenue for those, but those patients can convert to wellness and injury prevention, and many of them do want that in their home or in their pool or in their backyard or whatever it is. So you establish that relationship while they're under the particular plan of care that is appropriate. Again, billing that as a home-based service, and then establish that relationship and move into the non-covered services that I've mentioned. And it is a growing market, that is for sure.
Yeah, I would just say, Chad, you know, we've looked at some new technology, some suspension-related systems. Biodex has one. There's some other companies that have them as well. Just on the balance and fall prevention side, you know, it's one of the most significant problems that affects our senior population. A fall, you know, even in a healthy individual, which results in a time in bed. We just went through this as a family, a fall, which resulted in some bed rest time, which resulted in pulmonary complications, which ended up, you know, necessitating, you know, blood thinners and diuretics and other things, you know, then created cardiac problems and then, you know, a bad end result. And so that happens all too often. We're on the front end of evaluating, you know, whether there are, for certain, you know, subsets of the population, whether it be through insurance or outside of insurance, you know, some creative training programs that we can do to help reduce fall risk. And I think there's certainly a willingness to pay for that. I'm certainly not an expert either. We're just on the very front end of looking at how to do that and whether that can be something that we do on a portable basis, where we go out to, you know, to care centers and other residential institutions and deploy some of that technology, or whether that comes to us. But I think it's really needed at this point.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, really quick point on that. Within the BPTM community, we're working with, I think, 450 companies right now. There's a niche of owners who specialize in fall and balance prevention, and they've just taken the tools that we teach with direct access marketing and direct response marketing, and they're going to that population, the fall prevention, fall risk population, and they're crushing it. Their conversion numbers are actually higher than what we get with back pain and sciatica. And I mean, we don't specialize in that here. We specialize in spine, but it's at least on my radar enough. And seeing the success of these other practices and going out in the community, because it is a huge need. And I mean, the numbers show it. So you nailed that. And it is devastating to a family, you know, a fractured hip with the fall, ORIF, and then you have all the other conditions that come along with that. And exactly like you said, it's usually not a positive outcome. Families are really aware of it, and they're looking to you know, prevent that from happening. Awesome. Any other comment on that, Jeff or Sturdy?
Nothing, Chad.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add, Jack.
Okay, thank you. Carl? Carl, we have time for one more with respect to our panelists who've given us a ton of time. So, yeah, thank you, everybody that has been on the panel. This is, I think we covered a lot of ground here.
We really did.
Yeah, I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to be on the call with this panel. Yeah, and just if you're on this call right now and you can type it in the chat box and you got something out of this, just let us hear from you. Awesome. Thank you. But yeah, Carl, if you have one more question, that'd be great.
Several questions about like being out of network versus being in network, thoughts on what's better, and the challenges one can face with reimbursement being out of network, high deductibles, and full payment tips on how to tackle these challenges. And then also, like with the inconsistencies of reimbursement on, from out-of-network insurances, how do you figure out what each patient is worth?
Want me to jump on that, John?
Wow. Yeah, that'd be great, Sturdy.
Okay. We're largely out of network. We've done that over the course of several years. People like to say that we're cash. I think we're all cash. Unless, I said this at Graham Sessions, unless you're getting paid in chickens, then we're all cash. It's just a matter of who's paying us. To go backwards, we figure out what people owe through calling the same thing anybody else does. You call and get the benefits and find out what the portion will be, do the calculation, and inform the patient. The difference is you've got to sell the value, and that's not a huge difference in our current environment, though. With the deductibles being the way they are, with copays and coinsurance growing, I think those are things and skills to kind of piggyback on what Jeff was saying earlier about selling in the clinic. You've got to do that on the phone. You've got to do that early on and preempt it in it and really convey to people what the value is you're bringing, regardless of whether you're in network or out of network with different insurance payers. By the way, that's not a political or an ideological stance or what have you. We used to be in network with almost everybody. Downward pressure on pricing made us make some decisions, some of them easier, some of them harder, but it's just a progression we've done, and it's not, I don't think it's better. I think it really matters. It matters what you need to make. To Mary's point earlier, what's your cost, what's the profit margin you need or desire, and what are you willing to do? And if it fits with the contracted rate or a new negotiated contracted rate, then I think that's great. I would be in network with more if they paid us enough. The advantage of being out of network, the other one is you set your price point as opposed to having someone else dictate it. But it was a long process for us. I'm happy to help anybody out along the way, but we did it well in a couple instances. We did it poorly in a couple instances, and a lot of it just came down to communication, primarily with the patients and providers. But I hope that kind of answers it quickly.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sturdy. Anybody else on the panel?
Sure.
Great. Well, I think this is a wonderful. Go ahead.
I'm surprised no takers.
We don't have enough time.
I'll say this: but there are outlier situations. We do treat out of network mainly from the hospital system that is self-insured in our area. So there are employees of the hospital who go outside and they choose to pay cash pay. There is a formula. I forget exactly where we got that formula from. I believe it was from Carol Galetta and Sandy McEwen through the PPTA about what our cash pay rate should be. We use that, apply that for our clinic. I think it's around $90 or $92 a visit, cash pay rate. Hopefully I'm not getting myself in trouble there, but we have found that, again, you deliver value first. If you do exactly what our other panelists talk about in terms of providing good care, In particular, many times we've treated their either parents or another family member, maybe their sister or something like that. That's why they want to circle back around and come to us for physical therapy. And exactly as Sturdy just mentioned, many of the people in our area have $1,500 to $3,000 a year deductibles. We're on the cash-based business anyhow, so they're already paying that fee. To somebody, they're going to choose the place that's valuable, and they come in and we just handle it as a cash pay, and it all works out. Again, it's the exception to the rule. Maybe 3% of our total 3% of our total population base. The last time that I looked, 2.6 or something like that %. But nonetheless, that's there. The larger things I'll defer to Sturdy because he did it with his entire PT company. At this point,
we should ignore what Chad said as far as his fee. So we don't have any antitrust violations here. But it's nice to know about that formula, and that's something you can look at. That's very helpful. And please remember, when you're dealing with in and out network, there's some contractual regulations you have to be aware of.
Great. Thanks for protecting me.
Yeah, trying to do it, dear. Trying to do it.
To all of our panelists, Chris Redding, Jeff Ostrowski, Mary Daulong, and Sturdy McKee, I thank you for being on this call. This was awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.
Our pleasure.
Chad.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thanks everybody for coming. Yeah, I'm Carl. I'm the one who kind of marketed this whole thing. And if there's anybody, I see there's a ton of awesome businesses who help serve PT. And email me at carl@breakthroughptmarketing.com. And if there's any businesses out there that want to keep this thing going and get involved in it with us, we want to keep it going because it seems like it's a really good conversation. It's helping everybody. And thanks you guys for all coming on, and thanks Jeff, Chris, Sturdy, and Mary for coming. And you guys were great.
Thanks, Carl.
Right.
Thank you.
Good luck to
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
Happy Friday.
Yeah.
Bye.